Is the UAE shifting away from the dollar? You've probably heard the news by now. The UAE has officially joined BRICS, and that alone is a big enough headline. But what's flying under the radar is the bigger question. What does this mean for the US dollar? And more importantly, what does it mean for us here in the UAE? Because let's face it, for years the dirham has been pegged to the US dollar. The banking system, trade, remittances, investments, everything is deeply tied to the dollar. So when the UAE joins a global alliance like BRICS, which has been actively pushing for trade in local currencies and reducing reliance on the dollar, that's not just symbolism. That's a potential shift in the way the economy here functions. So today we're going to break it all down. Is the UAE really moving away from the dollar? What are the real world consequences of joining BRICS? And how does this impact your money, your business, and your future in the UAE? So let's get right into it. Alright, first, let's quickly set the stage. BRICS originally started as an economic alliance between Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. These are some of the largest emerging economies in the world, and over time, they've grown more vocal about creating a multipolar world, not one dominated by Western institutions or the US dollar. In 2024, BRICS officially expanded to include new countries, including the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Ethiopia, and Iran. The move was positioned as a way to better represent the global south in global economic policy. But behind the scenes, there is a much deeper agenda. BRICS has been openly pushing to settle oil and trade deals in local currencies, especially the Chinese yuan, Indian rupee, and potentially a new digital BRICS currency. And this is where it gets interesting for the UAE, because this country isn't just any oil exporter. It's a major global player. And the moment a country like the UAE starts entertaining trade in currencies other than the dollar, we're entering completely new territory here. Historically, the petrodollar system, which means oil being sold exclusively in dollars, has been one of the core reasons the dollar has maintained its global dominance. Every country in the world that needs to import oil needs to hold dollars. That creates an automatic demand for the dollars, as you can imagine, which strengthens it and gives the US a lot of leverage globally. But what happens if more oil starts to get sold in yuan, rupees, or dirhams? We're not fully there yet, but let's be clear. The UAE hasn't ditched the dollar. The dirham is still pegged to the US dollar. Most of our financial system still operates through dollar-linked systems, but cracks are beginning to form. Just earlier this year, ADNOC signed a deal to sell LNG to China. And guess what? It was settled in yuan. That's a small step, but symbolically, it's massive. This kind of move signals a willingness to de-dollarize, or at least diversify away from total reliance on the US dollar. And in the context of rising tensions between the West and the East and growing sanctions on countries like Russia and Iran, many governments, including the UAE, are looking at how to protect themselves from being overly reliant on any one currency or financial system. Now, let's talk about what this means on a practical level. For the banking sector in the UAE, this opens up both challenges and opportunities. On one hand, if the dirham ever becomes more flexible in its exchange rate, or we see more foreign currency settlement options like yuan or rupee, it could complicate things for traditional banks that are structured around the US dollar liquidity. But on the other hand, it creates new revenue streams. Banks might offer new multi-currency accounts, new forex services, or even participate in BRICS-backed financial systems that don't rely on the SWIFT network. For remittances, this could change the game completely. Right now, most remittance corridors are USD dominated. Even if you're sending money to India, Pakistan, or the Philippines, there's usually a US dollar leg in between. But if more cross-border payments start using local currency, currencies directly, it could reduce fees and settlement times, especially for high volume corridors like UAE India or UAE China. This could become a serious efficiency upgrade. Now, for businesses and investors, this is where things get really interesting. If you run a business that trades internationally, especially with China, India, or other BRICS countries, the ability to settle invoices in non-dollar currencies could give you a huge competitive advantage. It reduces your exposure to dollar fluctuations, lets you tap into alternative financing systems, and makes you less vulnerable to things like sanctions or global interest rate changes coming out of the US Federal Reserve. But there's a flip side to all of this as well. If the UAE gradually shifts towards more local currency usage or even adapts a dual currency strategy in the long term, it might introduce volatility into how pricing, contracts, and financial planning are done. For example, if you've always done business in US dollar and suddenly need to start dealing with yuan or rupees, you're now exposed to forex risk, hedging costs, and the need to adapt your accounting systems all over again. Now, let's zoom out for a second. Is the UAE really trying to break away from the dollar? In my opinion, I don't think so. Not entirely, at least. What I think is happening is this. The UAE is hedging its bets. We've seen the US weaponize the dollar in recent years, cutting off access to SWIFT, freezing reserves, and using sanctions as a political tool. And if you're a country like the UAE that wants to maintain neutrality and stability, it makes sense to diversify your financial alliances. By joining BRICS and doing select deals in other currencies, the UAE is essentially saying, we want options. That's not anti-American, it's just smart policy. It's financial independence. And remember, Dubai and Abu Dhabi are still deeply connected to the West. Western companies are still setting up here. The dirham is still pegged to the dollar, and the UAE has no interest in suddenly scaring off American investors or businesses. This isn't about replacing the dollar, it's about reducing risk, gaining flexibility, and preparing for a world where no one currency dominates everything. So what should you do with all of this information? If you're a business owner, start thinking about what a multi-currency future looks like for you. Can your business accept and send payments in more than just dirhams or dollars? Or can you price your products or services in other currencies if needed? Are your suppliers or customers in BRICS countries prepared to do business outside the dollar system? Now, if you're an investor, this is a signal to diversify. Maybe you want to start holding assets in other currencies. Maybe look at international ETFs, bonds, or properties that hedge you against dollar exposure. The world is shifting, and this is your chance to stay ahead of it. And if you're just a salaried expat or resident, it's worth watching how the UAE's financial ecosystem evolves year over year. We're in a time of rapid change, and staying informed could help you make smarter decisions when it comes to remittances, savings, or even career planning. So here is my final thoughts. The UAE joining BRICS is more than just a diplomatic headline. It's part of a larger trend of economic diversification and strategic hedging. We're not ditching the dollar tomorrow, but we're absolutely preparing for a future where the financial world looks a lot different than it did a decade ago. So is the UAE shifting away from the dollar? Not completely, but it's certainly building the runway. So let me know what you think in the comments down below. And do you think the dirham should stay pegged to the US dollar forever, or is it time for a change? And if you found this breakdown helpful, subscribe for more deep dives into business, finance, and life in Dubai. See you guys in the next one.